the shores of old Lake Erie stands our alma mater true. Fredonia state we proudly honor, with its colors white and blue.
Welcome to today's podcast, Reflections of Fredonia. I'm Jack Roxton. I am a retired professor of psychology, having taught here at SUNY Fredonia for over 40 years. And after retirement, I wondered what would I like to do next? And I thought it would be fun to interview former students at Fredonia and give them an opportunity to reflect on their time here and also to talk a little bit about where they have gone, what they are currently doing. We're recording this podcast right here on campus at Fredonia in the Fredonia radio systems. This is a Fredonia student-run radio station.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chloe Kowalik, and I am a recent alum. I graduated in 2024 in May, and I studied journalism and psychology with minors in English and political science when I was a student here. I, just like Dr. Croxton, felt the same way where I really wanted to connect with current students, alumni, kind of find that connection, what we love about Fredonia, and kind of just get to meet, people who went to the same school as me, and I think that's really cool.
So for today's podcast, we have a very special guest. So if you would go ahead and introduce yourself, give us your name and when you graduated from Fredonia.
Well, my name is Greg Hennessey. I was an art major here at SUNY Fredonia. Went to school here from 1982 to 86 and graduated in the summer of 86.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So you said you were an art student. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Like, what were the kind of mediums you worked in? Any particular projects that stand out to you?
Well, back when I was here, there were no Macs, so we were totally analog back in those days, and working with film and working with all kinds of different processes to replicate what a printed project would look like. And I was a lab technician and did some independent study. I studied under Paul Bowers there as an art major, and although I was a graphic design major, if you would, they didn't give us a major in art and graphic design back then. It was strictly art, and that was it. But there was a lot of great projects. I mean, it was always a tough thing with critiques at the end, because they would always throw everybody's stuff up on the wall and just critique the what out of it, and you would always feel kind of diminished. But it was really good because it really taught you how to see, and that was really what we were here for in Fredonia, was how to see, so that we could compose. And, it's a big bugaboo of mine now that, I don't think graphic designers are really taught a lot now because of the technology. They go right onto the Mac, they go right into the software, and they're really not taught how to see and how to create. We didn't have the luxury of having clip art and, stock photos and all this other stuff to go to. We had to start from scratch, and we were drawing things by hand with rapidograph pens and French curves and, smearing ink at 12 midnight, the night before a big project was due. And so back in those days, it was tough, and it was stressful, but it was great. And they had a lot of great equipment over at Rockefeller Hall to do everything.
So Greg, what inspired you to go to Fredonia initially?
Well, what inspired me was I grew up here in Fredonia, so I'm a Fredonia native. And I knew I wanted to get into the art department, so it was kind of an easy decision. And I will date myself. Tuition back in those days here at SUNY Fredonia was, I think, $650 a semester. So I got a very good quality education for not a lot of money. And I was a townie, although I did have an apartment over my father's business next to the White Inn, and so I kind of was on my own. But that's what. I never really looked anywhere else, because this was a absolutely fantastic art program, and on the same par as what RIT was giving, but for a lot less money. So
Interesting. That's cool. So I have a few questions here. So I have an initial question and then a follow-up question.
Okay.
So the initial question is, do you have any favorite memories or experiences from your time here?
Oh gosh, on campus or off campus? So many of them were off campus. I mean, days spent, downtown. We mentioned BJ's, before we got on air, and just hanging out with a lot of the art majors. Midnight sessions, like I said, in Rockefeller Hall, where we were trying to put together our projects and get them ready for go time. So when we had to be critiqued and deadlines are deadlines. I mean, if you weren't ready at 9 o'clock or whenever class was ready, you were done like dinner. So we spent lots of nights. That was kind of, I think, one of my favorite things to do was just to kind of hang out there and get projects done. And of course, I mentioned my own little pad, so I had my own little studio and art table and everything. So I could sit in quiet and peace and do my projects also there too. But yeah, I mean, the nightlife. I was the last class to come through Fredonia that was able to drink legally. So they changed I turned 18 in 1982, and they changed the age to 19, so for about 8 months. So we were kind of one of those classes that we were always downtown and having some fun. And when the campus bookstore there was over here at I can't even remember what the name, but the Sundowner was downstairs, and we used to go there on Thursdays for wing nights and dime drafts and nickel wings back in the day, and but it was all us art majors, and going down to or OMI was they had the bands back then too. They were fantastic bands just playing around campus here, and so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. It sounds like you had like the most community within your program, and that's where you met your people.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah. We had our people, all us art majors, and I kind of was I got involved in essay and what was Art Forum at the time, and we kind of combined it with AIGA, which was the American Institute of Graphic Arts, and so we called it AIGA Art Forum, and I was president of that organization at the time, and I was very idealistic back in those days, as we all I think were at that age. I was going to change the world, and certainly gave it my shot here when I was at Fredonia. But you kind of lighten up after a few years, and being out in the real world, as they say. But it was fun. I learned quite a bit. So.
Yeah, my follow-up question was actually going to be about if you were in any clubs. So you actually answered that, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think you might be happy to know that I believe, and it's been a little rocky with COVID happening, but Art Forum so we have Art Forum Club.
Oh, cool.
Which does exist today. I think they've been trying to revive it. I think there's been a few iterations between 2020 and 2024 when I was here.
Right.
And they've been doing like a lot of work with like advocacy for the sculptures on campus and
right.
Like trying to avoid like student censorship and stuff like that. So they're still around.
Oh, that's great.
They're doing great. So I thought you might like to know that.
Yeah, that is great to know. So
yeah, there's an old article in the Leader that I wrote a few years ago. I could try to find it and send it to you.
Yeah. So I wondered. You mentioned Professor Bowers.
Yeah.
Any other professors or classes that kind of stand out for you?
Well, pretty much everyone over there in Rockefeller. I mean, I loved Bob Booth. Had Bob for I did some sculpture with Bob. He was great. And as I mentioned, I've nicknamed my basement man cave the Flamingo Lounge, and he always used to say, "1 pink flamingo in your front yard is tacky, and 100 pink flamingos is art." And I've remembered that since then. Dr. Proweller, he was as a freshman, he was quite the eye opener, if you will, for a young little Fredonian who was kind of sheltered from the big world. And I
was thinking he was quite a character. He had a reputation on campus.
Yes, he did. And let's see, Mary Lee Lundy, loved her, had for life drawing, and John Hewson had him for some classes. So there was. I think the only professor over at the art department that I did not have was Marvin Bierland, because I didn't take any. Just didn't have time for ceramics classes, and it kind of turned out that Dr. Reif had to pull me aside. I said I graduated in the summer. In May of '86, he had to come to me and say, "We have a little problem. you actually took too many art courses and you didn't take enough non-art courses. I said, well, I minored in photography. I took 16 hours of photography. He says, yeah, that doesn't count as a minor because you can't minor in your major. And I'm like,
Right.
okay. And then I turned out I was 1 credit short of, I had 119 credits, so I had to take an English class. My mom was not happy with me, but oh well, such is life, right?
Right. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your career and what you've been doing since you graduated from Fredonia.
Well, I have been in the graphics biz ever since I graduated. I actually was in the graphics industry before I came to Fredonia. I worked at a small little a sporting goods store here in town, working the camera, creating artwork, doing silk screening of apparel,
Oh, that's cool.
and kind of went from that. I started out right after college, running an internal marketing department at Trippy Foods in Buffalo. And I just have worked from there. I worked at an agency. I worked at a pre-press company for about 13 years and then worked for another printing company. And I'm currently with a marketing services company right now. So the industry has definitely changed because, when I graduated, we were pretty much focused on print, doing graphic design for print. And now with technology, it's, hey, if you can do print, can you also use our images for the website and for social media and for all the different media and channels that are out there. So as they say, it's an omni-channel world now. So you've got to get your message out onto a bunch of different platforms. And now I'm learning how to be a podcaster because I'm a podcaster now myself. But I've used those skills that I learned here at Fredonia. I do my own graphics for my publications and use all those skills to get everything on my website and all that stuff. So it all started here at Fredonia.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So have you had any particularly unusual or interesting guests on any of your podcasts?
Oh, God. Well, yes and no, because everybody always, the one thing that I find fascinating is I'll have a band on, and one guy from the band will tell a story, and all the other ones will look at him and say, I never knew that. We've been together for 20 years, and I never knew that about you.
Yeah.
And because I have what I call my standard opening question, which is the aha question. And I always ask them if they had an aha moment when they decided they wanted to do music. And it always just starts the conversation. And because everyone is so afraid to, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, because I do an hour-long show, and I can't talk for an hour. And we'll get to the top of the hour, and they're like, really? We're done already? And I thought, yeah, it's crazy. But I've had, as mentioned, I had Mary Ramsey from 10,000 Maniacs on the show. John Lombardo from 10,000 Maniacs is scheduled to come on early in January, I believe, for my 150th episode. I've had Elmer Platz here, SUNY Fredonian, and
Awesome. Yep.
had Eric Van Rysdam, who's also another local stalwart in Buffalo, but I knew he was a Fredonia grad, and I've had a couple of different, and some of my friends from Fredonia who are musicians I've had on. I've tried to keep that Fredonia connection, going on the podcast. So, but just lots of different, both musicians and industry folks too. So if
Wonderful.
That's awesome. Actually, so if anybody was interested in listening to your podcast, how would they?
They could go to rockabillygreg.com and they could find the podcast. It's also on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Amazon Audible, Buffalo Toronto Public Media's mobile app called Amplify BTPM. And I know Elmer's involved in a new project called thehivebuffalo.com, which is trying to be all things, since the gusto has kind of gone away of the Buffalo News, to be a place where cultural activities can be coordinated and kind of as the Hive, all things cultural. So you can find the podcast there too.
Awesome. That's super cool. So for current Fredonia students, bringing it back to the Fredonia campus, do you have any advice?
Yes. If you are an art student, I am going to really advise you to put the computer down and get out a paper and a pencil or a pen, however you want to, and sketch some ideas. Get the ideas flowing. Understand what it is you're going to put down, because the Mac is no more a tool than a rapidograph pen was back in the day. It's a tool. It's not the design vehicle. It's the way that we do create things now and the way that we get the end product done. But focus on your artistic abilities and your ability to create something and know where your ideas are going to come from. It's actually going to save you time because sometimes you stare at that Mac and you just have absolutely no idea where you're going to go with an idea, and that will really help. That was probably one of the best things that I ever learned when I was here, and it still works today.
I think that's great advice.
That is good advice.
So I think we're about ready to wrap up our interview today. But Greg, is there anything else you would feel like you'd like to add?
No, I could talk for weeks.
Me too.
Because it's what I do. But Fredonia was a great place to grow up, come to here to college, and I'm glad to come back. And thank you so much for inviting me to be on the program.
Well, we've really enjoyed hearing your stories and hearing about your road to where you are today.
Well, thank you.
So this is completing our podcast today. I am Jack Croxton.
And I'm Chloe Kowalik, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
Sing its glory and its praises. Let them ring forever true. Beloved is our alma mater, Fredonia State